January 6 inmates have been in custody for months, 6 months and going. And we are going to be spending some time today talking about another defendant who just filed a motion to try to get out of custody. His name is Dominic Pezzola. And because he's been in custody for almost 7 months now, you might be thinking that he is somebody, who sort of committed a very heinous crime. We're going to talk about that. Let's go in and get some background before we go into the motion that his attorneys filed. He hired a new attorney, and this attorney filed a very substantive motion saying that the treatment that he is receiving in DC jails is horrendous. It's unconstitutional. It's violating some of his attorney-client rights, and it is warranting his release immediately. So we're going to go through that motion, but we got to learn about who this individual is before we can dissect the actual court document. So Just the News gives us some background here. It says January 6 inmates endure, quote, human rights violations on a daily basis, according to a new bail motion that was recently submitted. The motion says that the DC jail effectively bans attorney-client privilege for January 6 defendants, claim their lawyers. Now, when lawyers start to make those claims, and these are reputable lawyers, and they've got a lot of practice, in criminal law and other areas, those are pretty big claims, right? Attorneys, at least myself and at least attorneys here, right? We don't typically make allegations like that unless there's some evidence to back that up. A lot of what you see sort of in the Hollywood TV shows and the movies, and people coming out and sort of making these allegations of abuse. It can be common in criminal law, but attorneys will typically make those claims with evidence, right? It's not like you see on the news where people just come out there and they sputter off a bunch of stuff, or you can maybe even categorize this show as that. Rob just comes out here and runs his mouth all day, right? That might be fair, but the point is, when attorneys are doing this in formal motions, there's typically some evidence behind it. It's not just a bunch of sort of bloviation and angry words. There's typically something more. So when an attorney comes out and says, hey, I can't even really do my job because of the attorney-client privilege problems, that's a big deal. And we've talked a lot about this. Remember, we talked about Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein and all of the problems that Ghislaine Maxwell is going through. We've been talking about her attorney, Miss, can't remember her name, but a lot of these issues are involving attorney-client privilege, relationships between the attorney and the defendant. And we've seen in Ghislaine Maxwell's case that they have made a lot of accommodations. They let laptops in, they let her have a lot of phone calls, and anytime there's a problem, it turns into this big ordeal. It's kind of something similar is happening here. So this author who wrote this article says that if the late Jeffrey Epstein's alleged partner can be granted a laptop for 13 hours a day, why not the January 6 defendants, right? If Ghislaine Maxwell is being accommodated in her case, why not everyone else? We have a 43-year-old veteran now incarcerated in the DC jail for 150 days. He's been effectively shut out of his own defense in violation of constitutional guarantees, not just for the defendants, but also for their counsel. We're going to go through this here. Not only is Pezzola unable to adequately view the voluminous text, audio, and video that is all being held by the prosecution, but he's also housed a short drive from the Capitol. His right to attorney-client privilege is functionally meaningless, because he's, I guess, being housed where he's being housed. So who is this guy? You may remember him. He was seen here with Jacob Chansley, another Capitol Hill defendant we've talked a lot about. This is from inside, obviously, that day. It looks like they're having a conversation here between this officer and this guy. But this guy is not who we're talking about. We're talking about Pezzola right here. Dominic Pezzola. You can see here a closer photograph of him and another angle, right? Of course, this is Jacob Chansley, the QAnon shaman. He is also still in custody. He has tried to get out of custody 3 times, been denied 3 times. My understanding is for Dominic Pezzola, this is his first attempt, and we're going to take a look at what's happening here. So there he is, right? Part of that crew. This is the original press release from Merrick Garland and the U.S. Attorney's Office back on January 15th, very excited with themselves, says that a New York State man was taken into custody. What was he charged with? Unlawful entry, destruction of property, obstruction of an official proceeding. His name is Dominic Pezzola. He's also known as Spaz, right? S-P-A-Z or Spazzo. Rochester, New York, charged with all these different charges. We're going to take a look at those. Affidavit said that he broke a window at the Capitol but with a U.S. Capitol Police shield. Also, an individual yelled, "Go, go, go," before entering the building. Affidavit says that there was a video that he can be saying, doing a victory smoke in the Capitol, boys. This is effing awesome. I knew we could take this mother effer over if we just tried hard enough, right? So they've got all of that in there. He included, they say he was with the Proud Boys, right? So officially with the Proud Boys. At some point, after it ended, the affidavit in support of the criminal complaint says that he bragged about breaking the windows, stated that he would have, quote, killed anyone they got their hands on, including Speaker and Vice President Pence. The affidavit also alleges that members of the group would return to Washington and kill every single MFer they could, right? So that's problematic language. And so a lot of people will say, well, clearly that's probably should just give him the death penalty for those words, right? A lot of people say that. Now, a criminal complaint is a formal accusation of criminal conduct. The case is being prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of that going on, and people say a lot of things all the time. People say things all the time, and they don't get charged with crimes for them. Right? You've probably said a lot of things. You know, if you do that again, I'm going to do this. Might have been a threat. Might have been some locker room talk, right? Could have been a lot of problematic things that came out of your mouth. But you don't get charged with crime for most of those things, because that's sort of a pre-crime, isn't it? We charge people based on their actions. In most cases, there are threatening and intimidating rules and all sorts of stuff like that. But if you're going to just say his promise to come back or his threat to kill, certain people that were not direct, that were not contemporaneous, that had no, real-time possibility of being carried out, there are frameworks for saying what is a true threat and what is not a true threat. That all exists in the law. So what you're seeing Merrick Garland do is come out and he's trying to use this bad language, saying all these scary things. He used a lot of scary words out there, and that justifies keeping him in custody for 6 months. It does not. Those are not crimes, unless they were actual true threats. There's a whole nother legal analysis for that, which they're not doing here, because we can see these are the charges: civil disorder, temporary residence, conspiracy to defraud the United States. We've got civil disorder, another maritime burglary, assaulting, resisting, government property contracts, temporary residence of the president, right? Entering or remaining in unrestricted buildings. All trespass and disorderly conduct and criminal damage charges, but a big fat stack of them over here for him. Now, he has some co-defendants in the case, so those are sort of scattered around. Let me show you what's going on here. This is the court docket. And we'll notice that on July 9th that there was a first motion to modify bail. It was filed here to release from custody by his attorney for Dominic Pezzola. First motion to place him on conditional release pending trial. First motion to place him in high-intensity supervision program. First motion to modify the release conditions, and a bunch of other attachments. Right now, the government filed a motion to request an extension of time. They are very, very busy because we know that they don't know how to prosecute cases, apparently. And so they need more time to file a memorandum in opposition to the motion, which is no problem. I think that's reasonable. So the judge granted that yesterday, said, yep, this motion is pretty big and pretty hefty, so we're going to grant you some more time to go and respond to that government. So this is the motion itself. You see this was filed out of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. 57 pages, another big whopper here. Again, we're not going to read through the entirety of the document. U.S. of America versus Dominic Pezzola. Defendant Pezzola, the motion for bail, and they want conditional release pending trial. So he's being represented by this new attorney now, Martin Tankclef, and he actually filed, did I get this? Yes, I did. So on July 9th, this is when he entered his appearance, right? So he's pretty new. Metcalf appearing for Dominic Pezzola, Metcalf as Stephen. And so this is from the same organization here, Metcalf PC. So what that typically means is that the law firm entered an appearance and then they have another attorney sort of working the case up. So you can see that here, Metcalf PC. The attorney working the case is Martin T. Tankclef. So what's in here? Let's take a look at the preamble. And we have Dostoevsky. If you listen to Jordan Peterson, you'll note that he references him often. Once stated, a society should be judged not by how it treats its outstanding citizens, but by how it treats its criminal. Yep. Agree with that. The moral test of government is how that government treats those who are in the dawn of life, the children, those who are in the twilight of life, the elderly, those who are in the shadows of life, the sick, the needy, and the handicapped, right? You got to think about the weakest people, the people that everybody wants to just throw out. The people that they say they're beyond any sort of redemption. They are just human debris. We don't care about them. Like we see historically. Often this happens where certain demographics, certain populations, certain ideologies, everybody just says they're the worst. And we don't care what happens to them. And that's a problem. That's why people have to stand and fight for them. Because if that continues to happen, then there's no counterbalance to a tyrannical government. They're just going to continue to say, oh, those due process violations, those are just minor, because those were for that group that nobody cares about. Oh, it's just the January 6th defendants. So who cares if they're still in custody? Who cares about their due process rights? Those people almost wrecked America. They almost took over the whole country. So we don't care about them. Wrong answer. I do care about them. I don't care what they did. I don't care what anybody did. Due process is a bigger principle. The presumption of innocence is a bigger principle than any crime. And I'll take that to the end of the earth. Denny Scott quoted Gandhi saying, the measure of a civilization is how it treats its weakest members. The greatest of a nation can be judged by how it treats its weakest member. If there is any justice in our society, it is to grant bail to a defendant, especially since 1988, while under indictment for double murder. This person was released on $1 million bail after several months of freedom, right? So he's going to go through and give us some examples of some other people who have been released. Let's take a look at the introduction. He says, Dominic isn't charged with murder. Other people who have been charged with more serious crimes are often granted bail. So now they're moving for bail for two reasons. Number one, the treatment in D.C. has violated his human rights, and his assistance, the effective assistance of counsel, has been totally violated. He cannot adequately review the discovery, which is all of the criminal files in his case. And number three, the presumption against bail for pretrial detainees. Those are the three reasons why he should be released. He said this event on January 6th did not occur in a vacuum. He says the government is unable to prove that Pezzola, hereafter referred to as Dom, or Mr. Pezzola, is a flight risk. They haven't been able to prove that. Instead, the case boils down to dangerousness, whether he is actually dangerous and whether the government can demonstrate that he should be detained because there's nothing else that they can do to secure the safety of society, right? We typically say this. Bail, keeping somebody in custody when they're not convicted of anything, they haven't pled guilty of anything, we still have the presumption of innocence in this country. So the concept is you let them out of custody unless it's basically impossible to do that, unless you sort of know that person's going to flee, they're a flight risk, or unless that person's a danger to society or themselves, then that's a dangerous person. We can't let them out. But everything else, man, we really want to let people out because of the presumption of innocence. And the government has to prove that. The default is not we keep you in custody. The default is we keep you out. They're saying the government has not met that burden. He says Dom has lived in his home for 20 years. When he was apprehended, he was in his own home, right? So he was there on the 6th, went home, knew he was there, wasn't trying to flee, wasn't trying to run anywhere. They actually went to his house and picked him up. They didn't go, pull him out of somebody's basement deep in hiding. So we go through some of the arguments. Point one, the constitutional right to assistance in one's defense and supplement if necessary. So he says every defendant has at minimum a right to counsel. It's also including confidential communications done by person, by mail, or by phone. In this case, Pezzola has a right to communicate that has been severely infringed. So we got a couple typos here. I hate to point these out, but the right to assistant in one's defense, which should be assistance, and severely infringed, this should be counsel has been severely infringed, I think. All right. However, the pretrial conditions of the DC jail, and I know I do that. I know I shouldn't because I have a lot of typos, but I just do it. However, the pretrial conditions of the DC jail have created an environment where these defendants, especially Pezzola, are unable to assist in their own defense and thus not ensured effective assistance of counsel. Let's have some examples. So we've got one here. Another one of their clients, Edward Jacob Lang, an observant Jew, is now labeled as a false prophet because he prayed for other inmates. DC guards apparently are abusing this guy. There's a smaller group of inmates that have it bad in DC. They're awaiting trial for the January 6 crimes. They've been placed in, quote, restrictive housing, which is a maximum security designation. Regarding the restrictive housing, one reporter noted how solitary confinement is a form of punishment that is cruel and psychologically damaging. And this comes from Warren. Guess who that is? Elizabeth Warren. Told Politico a month later. So she says, The Massachusetts Democrat fears that the defendants are being singled out to punish them or to break them so that they will cooperate. From Elizabeth Warren. Durbin was surprised, another Democrat, to learn about the restrictive housing. Says it should be a rare exception with a clear justification. The Illinois Democrat told a news outlet it should be used with very limited circumstances. But staff for Durbin, who chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Warren, a member of the Senate Democratic leadership, did not respond to queries for an update on their efforts to get better treatment for the January 6th defendants, because they're not going to do that. It's not their issue. They don't care. But it is nice that they agree, at least philosophically, that it is problematic. It would be nice if they stood up and said something about this to their own party, which is in charge of the Justice Department and the White House. Might be good, but they're not going to say anything because that is not politically expedient for them. We have the plight of nearby inmates has received surprisingly little attention on Capitol Hill for the better part of a year. Since the D.C. Department of Corrections issued a medical stay in place, it's impossible, this attorney says, to have free-flowing conversations with defendant Pezzola. Attorney-client meetings are in open cages where there is no confidentiality. Everyone can hear the conversations, including prison guards. Undersigned counsel experienced this when they visited with Dom at the D.C. jail. So he actually went down there, right, and sat with him and said, listen, Judge, I'm sitting here. These stinking guards can hear everything we're talking about. There's no confidentiality at all. I was there. Giant problem. Right? And good for this attorney for calling it out. Man, contact visits where a defendant meets with his lawyer in person at the jail require the defendant then to quarantine for 14 days. This was told to undersigned counsel when visiting. Essentially, the attorney-client privilege is non-existent, he says, depriving Dom of his fundamental right to counsel. Considering the conditions that he's housed in, the manner in which the legal visits are conducted, there is a strong likelihood that the government is intruding on the attorney-client privilege. Yeah. All right. Let's see what point number 2 says. He says the defendant needs access to a laptop. Every defendant has a right to review the discovery materials in their own case. And the U.S. government has said that this is part of the largest criminal investigation and prosecution in history. We've heard them say that. They're all over the place, hyperventilating about how hard this is. Oh, we're so overworked. We're so overburdened. There's like 500 different cases that we got to work on. You're going, what? Because the city of Scottsdale does about 600 every month like this. No problem. All day long. Not an issue. So if they're going to be spending $6.1 million to create this database so that defense attorneys can see everything and blah, 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 and they're going to be opening up different branches of Capitol Hill Police in different parts of the country, California and Florida, to start coming to a locale near you soon enough, then that means that there's a lot of evidence out there, right? So a sly defense attorney might say, well, Judge, I mean, you've heard from them how much evidence there is. We need access to all of that. And so we need, just like Ghislaine Maxwell has 13 hours a day of laptops, and we need all of these other things in order to review all the material because we have to prepare our defense. Bobby Sternheim is the name of Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney. Excellent maneuvering over there. Okay. Good work from her. This attorney's doing a great job also. Says defendant Pezzola is entitled to review every document, every video, every audio, and anything else that FBI, DOJ, U.S. Attorney's Office, or any other agency or generating video or audio materials has. Right? No such review. Such a review must not be dictated on whether his attorneys can visit him. No such burden should be placed on counsel or corrections, especially considering the financial and time-consuming burden it would place if they were required to visit with Dom at the jail and review each and every video. So if you've got all that evidence there, government, well, you better give us some concessions is the word there, because we need a laptop and we need all sorts of additional accommodations in order to go through all of your evidence, which is really just, I think, a red herring, right? How much evidence do you need to prove those charges? It's a trespass case. It's a damage case. So I understand the need to maybe bundle all of that evidence up so that you can go and investigate the unidentified people. But for the people who have been charged, they should have the evidence. They don't need to, keep continuing this stuff for end of time while they keep people in custody. Ridiculous. Point 3, DC jail is committing human rights violations on a daily basis. The jail allows prisoners to leave their cells from anywhere from an hour a day to a few hours a day. So you get a couple days out of custody. No religious services are allowed. Dozens of prisoners have to share the same fingernail and toenail cutter without it being disinfected between each use. So these people are just, they're actually being treated like subhumans. Exercise, especially outdoor access, is limited or non-existent. Under the restrictive housing conditions, exercise is limited, whereas others in the jail have more ability to exercise. So it sounds like maybe unequal protection for some of the defendants who've been charged with Capitol Hill January 6 crimes, whereas some other defendants are not. Access to personal hygiene, such as showers, is nearly non-existent, according to our client and defense lawyers and relatives I've spoken with. Those housed in the general population are able to take a shower whenever they want. Huh, interesting. Why is that? The same can be said for those seeking a haircut. Every person we have spoken to has stated that they have been denied a haircut since their imprisonment commenced at the DC jail. Every person that they've spoken to. Well, we saw Jacob Chansley. He had a buzz that day, so I think he's okay. But they're saying that everybody else, no haircuts. Those in general population versus restrictive housing have more chances to wash their clothing. Those in general population have the ability to either visit the law library or gain more materials than those being housed in restrictive housing. All right, so they're just getting abused. The detainees, before a single moment of their trial has begun, suffer the same harsh treatment as convicted criminals in the DC prison. Pandemic-justified conditions recently condemned by elected officials of both parties. The treatment is so bad that they found advocates in unlikely allies. We already talked about Warren and Durbin talking to Politico. The issues of confinement are so widespread that politicians are conducting ongoing investigations into this matter. Undesigned counsel has spoken to members on the Hill. Worse, though, is that when the press covers these issues, prisoners such as Dom are retaliated within 48 hours of a newspaper article or television report airing. Can you believe that? So if there's complaints that go out there, it sounds like this attorney is alleging that the guards actually conduct retribution. They retaliate within 48 hours to the defendants. So punishing people for things that I guess other people in the news are saying who have not been convicted of anything. Nice. All right. So just like we sort of went through with some of the gun laws, now we have a compare and contrast with some of the other people who have been released with bail or with bond. So this attorney, we've talked about this here. I love this. I absolutely love this. Doing a compare and contrast. We've talked about this in the version of, buying a house or buying a car and sort of comparing and contrasting the differences between the two. Why is that house worth $500,000? Well, it's got a pool, it's got this, it's got that, it's got all these features and benefits. And you say, yeah, but it's the square footage is this house, and this house is only half the price. Well, it's because it doesn't have a pool, doesn't have any of those nice features, right? And we sort of, kind of do something similar in law, right? We're comparing and contrasting elements of a case. And so you'll say, well, this person has no criminal record. They live in the state. They've got a mother and a daughter. And so they're not a flight risk and they've never missed a court date. So we don't have to worry about warrants or anything like that. And so you go through the list and you just sort of, okay, all of these things are the same in my case. And so we're asking the court to find in conformity with other prior precedent. What else is going on out there, Judge? Look at all these other examples. So why don't you do something that everybody else is doing? It's one way to argue that. You can also distinguish things that way, right? So you can say that these are not similar. You can say that person is being held in custody because X, Y, and Z were really bad. I know it's the same charge, but those were really bad things that person did. Our client didn't do any of that at all. So we're going to distinguish our case from their case. And so this attorney, bravo. I think this is brilliant. Same point I've made here. You've heard me make this point here, saying, why are the Capitol Hill defendants in jail, in custody, when many other people who've committed more serious crimes are out? This attorney, brilliant, does this, says that Elias Aaron Perez Diaz was charged with multiple sex crimes in Wisconsin in 2021. Multiple sex crimes, okay, with like an actual victim, right? Somebody was raped or assaulted. Here, the congressional building was assaulted, but nobody was charged with a sex crime in this case. This person currently being held at the detention center on a $1 million bond. So as soon as they can post that, they'll get out of custody. Raping children in Burleigh County, $1 million bond. For Dominic and Chansley, zero bond, no bond. We got Trump's CFO, Weisselberg. He's been released on bail. Okay, so if you're going to be a hysterical Cyrus Vance or Letitia James over there, no, Trump's out. Trump's guy's out. Okay, Allison Mack, right? The Nexium sex trafficking crime. She had a $5 million bail, so she got out of custody. They were branding, women on their thighs and things. We have Lori Loughlin and Massimo Giannulli, right? Those two people, that was the mail fraud, the federal court's, admission scandal. They got out of bond, $1 million each. Ryan Lewin, $1 million bail. That was assault with the intent to murder, assault with the intent to do bodily harm with 2 firearms. 2021, he got a $100,000 bail with firearms and assault with intent to murder. None of that happened with the Capitol Hill people. We have Jonathan Rodriguez Zamora, shooting into an inhabited dwelling, carrying a concealed weapon, driving a person while discharging a firearm for a vehicle, a drive-by shooting, 3 counts of attempted murder in California. Guess what? That guy's out on bail. $3 million bail. He's out. He may not be out. I don't know if he posted that or not, but he can get out. Just got to come up with the money. We have 11 individuals charged with 8 counts of unlawful possession of a firearm. No firearms for Dominic. Not even in the charges. Unlawful possession of ammunition, use of body armor in commission of a crime, all out. 11 individuals, $100,000 each. All out. Let's see what else. Adam Christian Johnson, 3 counts of entering or remaining in a restricted building without lawful authority. Okay, so that sounds very similar to what we've got with the Capitol Hill rioters. How about theft of government property? Yep, we have the guy who stole the podium, almost seized control of the country. We also had the guy who was committing disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds. Oh, maybe this was a Capitol Hill case. 2021, this guy got a $25,000 bail. So why is Dominic still in custody? Derek Chauvin, they wrap up. 2nd-degree murder, 3rd-degree murder, 2nd-degree manslaughter, actually convicted in court before that happened. He was out on a $1 million bail. And we all saw that video. Did anybody in the Capitol do anything quite like that? No? So then why are they still in custody? Sergeant Daniel Perry, charged with murder, assault, deadly conduct for killing an Air Force veteran, Garrett Foster. Remember we talked about that case? Happened in Texas. We covered that. $300,000. He's out. LaDonna Bogg, murder of her 2-month-old baby, DC, released on no-cost bail. So they just said you're out. Murder of her 2-month-old baby. Oh, you're just gone. Yeah, no problem. You promised to come back to court? That's it. There you go. All right. No-cost bail. So why then are the Capitol Hill defendants being held in custody still 6 months later with all sorts of due process violations, equal protection violations across the board? Because they're political prisoners. It's pretty obvious. All right, let's see how this attorney wrapped up the request. Wherefore, for the foregoing reasons, we want a full hearing. If this request is denied, we want third-party custody option. So what you're going to see him do is he kind of works his way down the list of requests. He says, first and foremost, we want him out of custody. If you can't do that, how about third-party custody? If you can't do that, how about let's see, a cell phone in jail, right? So let's walk through this. He says, first and foremost, we want him out on personal recognizance. So just let him out. If you don't do that, let's put him on third-party custody with pretrial services. We can do electronic monitoring. We can do work release. We can do curfew. We can also put other reasonable conditions on it. He's going to be on intensive supervision. We're going to check in with him with somebody checking on him from the pretrial services agency and all that stuff. Pretty reasonable to me. See if the judge works with him on any of those factors. And he says, listen, if all of those forms are denied, how about this? How about we give him his cell in DC and a laptop so that we can go through the evidence of the case. If he gets out, he can just come to our office. But if you don't let him out, then we need something because there's a due process problem here. All written discovery provided by the government, all audio and video discovery provided by the government, the ability to email and receive emails from his attorneys, the ability to generate notes, documents, and other relevant materials to aid in his own defense, and a guarantee that no one shall access the laptop in an effort to gain access to the attorney-client privilege materials, dated July 9th, signed off on here by Martin Tancleff, Esquire, from Stephen A. Metcalf and Metcalf over in New York. Good stuff. I like that motion. You know I can kind of be annoying on the typo thing, but solid. I like it. I like where it's going, and I think this is good stuff. I'd like to see what the judge has to say about that, because the judge kind of now has to thread the needle when you frame it out that beautifully. You say, look, all these different people here. So, Judge, based on what I just showed you, what's your justification for why he's still in custody? Let's see what the judge says. And we've already seen some of the judges come out and rule on this. Their response is always the same. It's, yeah, but this is a special case. Why? Because it's the Capitol building. So what? Well, it's the Capitol building. Yeah, we know, but they were counting votes again back there by like 8 o'clock that night. The whole thing was over in 2 hours, 4 hours or something like that. Yeah, but it's the Capitol, and that's the heart of democracy, and I'm very offended about it. So that's why they have to remain in custody. And you say, Judge, what about due process? What about the presumption of innocence? Well, but it's the Capitol building. So, all right. So now we've got some new lawyers on the case. They're going to be working it through the system. Hopefully it goes somewhere, because this stuff is just reprehensible. It's not right at all. All right, let's see what is coming in over from the questions. We've got some live chat happening over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. There's a Juicy Smollett conversation happening. I think he had court today. Juicy Smollett is back in the house. So we've got a lot of activity over there. We're going to check in with some of the questions. Let's see. We've got a first question is coming in from Sharon Quirke. Says, the current regime can't afford to release their political prisoners or allow them to have their civil rights. They have to keep the narrative that January 6th was essentially treason. They can't be afraid of them talking because Pravda Investia, big media, big tech would never give them a platform to speak. Yeah, it's a useful tool for them to continue to use. And so if they get these cases resolved quickly, well, then they can't, continue to prosecute the January 6th defendants. They have no interest in resolving these soon. Want to Know says, standing next to Shaman, obviously guilty by association. In the picture, it looks like they're talking to the police. Don't see fighting going on. Yeah, it looks like they're having a nice, powwow there. Thunder7 says, hey, Rob, didn't the Antifa thug John Sullivan get released and he was caught high-fiving the CNN reporter, celebrating that they got into the Capitol? He broke the window and screamed that we should burn the MFer down. Why isn't there a class action lawsuit for these MAGA political prisoners for cruel and inhumane treatment? Amnesty would recognize them as political prisoners. I do remember that. So John Sullivan, in fact, I think he got paid like 70 grand for some of his footage by CNN and some of the other big media companies. And so there were a lot of questions about that. Who is this guy? Where'd he come from? Was he sort of in on it? What's the deal there? Because I think he was a part of BLM and then like excommunicated from them. And so, you don't know people like that. They could be professional agitators to some degree. So who knows if that's true or not. But yes, I think that there are some pretty problematic things happening with the Capitol Hill defendants. There's no question about that. Class action is, of course, not the appropriate mechanism there, but certainly I would like to see more robust advocacy from the defense bar, right? I mean, we talk about these cases here, but I really don't hear much other people shouting from the rooftops about this being a problem, at least from the legal sphere. Everybody's mostly quiet about this. There's a handful of defense attorneys who are screaming from the rooftops about this, but everybody else is just kind of, well, it's the Capitol Hill defendants. Nobody cares about them. Good question there, Thunder7. We'll see where it goes. Let's see what's else. We've got nope, I already did that one. We've got Osak says, Rob, can you explain what the penal code is? So yeah, pretty simply, it's just the criminal code. So penal code sort of means the criminal statutes. It's sort of, what happened, how do we penalize you? Same kind of root word there, if you break the law. And so we call it the penal system. We call it the statutory penal code is the statute the laws. Then you have the penal system, which is what punishes the people who break the laws. So it's all just criminal law is the way to explain that. Sharon Quirke says, the treatment of these political prisoners is an outrage. I never thought I would agree with Warren on anything, but in this instance, she's right, like a broken clock, right twice a day. This is the way political prisoners were treated under Stalin and other evil totalitarian dictators. Hardly a surprise since they're working out of Stalin's playbook. Good to hear from you, Sharon. Yeah, I was surprised too. I was like, Elizabeth Warren, Durbin, hey. But when you're right, you're right. We got Jeremy here says, things are bad when even the left starts showing humidity. Do you think the ones being denied their rights can seek relief by appealing to the Supreme Court, assuming they get convicted? So it's not, it's not an easy just throw up to the Supreme Court. So they would have to go through the formal appellate process in order to get there. And I doubt that we're going to, if I had to guess, I doubt that we see anything of consequence come out of the Supreme Court on any of these cases. In other words, I don't think that the Supreme Court is going to tell us, that the government did something wrong in this prosecution. The government's going to be able to justify their behavior on the basis that this was an unprecedented thing, and the courts are just going to let them skate through all of this. I really don't know that there's going to be much reform that happens. Remember, this is all taking place in D.C. I think that most of that is basically unsalvageable at this moment in time, but we'll see. Joe Snow is here, says, wish I had access to a laptop when I was held at the 26th Street, Cook County for months without bail for possessing weed when I was 18. Possessing weed, you monster, Joe. How could you? Wow, that's like the crime of the century, obviously. So I'm surprised you're still with us here for that. You probably should still be in custody over there for that violation. I'm obviously joking. Okay. It's insane that people are in prison or jail for weed. It's ridiculous. I actually, on some good news there, I think I did see an article. What was that? Talking about one of the Democrats is actually talking about, it's Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. That's who it is. Chuck Schumer was talking about essentially decriminalizing marijuana. So, rolling it back from a Schedule I drug under federal law or whatever they have it classified as, saying that they might actually modify that and decriminalize it, which would be a very, very nice thing. We'll see if that happens. We've got Want to Know says, those comments from Warren and Durbin are just CYA. Everyone needs an attorney like Maxwell can afford. Most normal people don't get that. Best justice system the money can buy. Yes. So Maxwell's attorneys are so good. It's like mind-boggling. Very, very good. All right. Joe Snow says, I too have been denied a haircut since this pandemic started. I have a disability, cannot wear a mask. No salon barber is willing to defy the state of Illinois and allow anyone without a mask on their face inside their establishment, regardless of medical exemptions. My one longtime friend who did cut my hair without a mask in May was in a tragic motorcycle accident and died 11 days after cutting my hair. I'm not saying it was Hillary Clinton, but come on. Okay, so thank you, Joe. First of all, I'm sorry about your friend. That's terrible. That's tragic. Absolutely. That's absolutely terrible. And not having a haircut is also bad. Not as bad, but it is bad. So hopefully you get that solved. We've got, let's see who is here. We got Three Girlies is here. Says, as a former state of Ohio CO, correctional officer, I can attest that SEG and protected custody are inhumane, right? So sort of isolated confinement, and it should never be used for anyone. Wow. Let alone people who have not been convicted of crimes. The conditions in that jail sound absolutely appalling, but none of the inmates in our state institution had access to a laptop in their cell. They were able to access a computer at the library. I know many had their dockets and files, had a lot of legal notebooks to make notes on, and had access to law books. What is the likelihood that this guy can get relief and or bail? So, I don't know. Based on my faith in humanity, I would like to believe that it's likely that he gets bail, right? Because I'm not sure that he's had a compelling attempt at being released yet. And this is a pretty compelling attempt. We have seen other Capitol Hill defendants get out of custody, and we've seen others not get out of custody. And so I would like to think that he does get released. But I don't know, right? We've seen some judges that just are very difficult out of the DC circuit. So, I would have thought that a lot more people would have been out, but I've been surprised by this, candidly. Other forms of relief, I would think would be more appropriate, right? A judge is going to have a very big problem if there is, a lack of confidentiality or an attorney-client privilege. And so I think the judge is going to want to fix that around the margins to say, okay, wait a minute, right? It is happening in an open space, and during a hearing, an attorney comes in and says, yeah, judge, I was literally sitting here in an open, conference room and the guard was standing 20 feet away, right? That's going to be a problem. And the judge is going to have to do something to correct that. So I guess my point here is some of this stuff is discretionary and the judge might have the ability to, model it around the edges. But some of the other stuff is I guess a matter of political opinion for the judges. And so they have some tools in the toolbox that they can use to fix some of the due process violations, but they may not want to pull those tools out because they don't think that the non-bondable issue is in fact a problem, right? They think that it's their discretion, that this person's a threat to society or a flight risk, and so they're just going to hold fast on that. But they can't also hold fast on that and then not make any accommodations on some of the procedural due process stuff, which has a likelihood of being problematic. Good question there, and thank you for your input, Three Girlies. So a former CO from the state of Ohio, no SEG or protected custody for anybody, really, is sort of what you were summarizing for us there. Thank you for that. And our last one is here from Joe Snow, says, if trespassing is, quote, treason, I can't wait to hear what an election problem might be considered. Can't use those words there, Joe, but I get your point. Yeah, well, probably nothing, probably not much of anything, because they're just going to continue to paper over all of that. And great questions. Let's check back in with the chat. We got Joe's over there. Sharon's in the house. It's Ed is here. Good to see you. It's Ed. Let's see who else. Sharon's there. Okay, so a lot of stuff happening at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, and we appreciate all of your love and support over there. We've got a couple new people who signed up. If you're not over there chatting away, I want to welcome a couple new people. And Lavassier is also on this list. They're going to be added tomorrow. For some reason, they're not here. Curious ENGG is here. So Curious ENGG, welcome to the community and signed up for the yearly. Appreciate that very much. Curious Eng is here. So I don't know if that's engineer or what it is. We had Boom made a one-time support. Thank you, Boom, for chiming in and supporting the show. And of course, some people who just recently signed up: George Kloss, U Ramirez. We have Angela B66, Freedom Lives, One Florida Man, and of course Texas Flat Roof Man just signed up recently, along with Lavassier, who signed up, which is one of the best names ever. And if you are not already a member at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, that might be a problem, because you're going to miss out on our upcoming event taking place on July 24, 2021. 7 to 8 p.m. on a Zoom. It's our monthly locals meetup, and we want to invite you to come and be a part of that so we can get to know each other and build that community that we keep talking about that kind of insulates us from some of the other big platforms. All happening at our locals community, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And of course, I really do appreciate all of your support and love. It really means the world to me. All right, my friends, and that is it for us for the day. We're going to be back here same time, same place tomorrow. It's going to be 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Mountain time, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast, and for that One Florida Man. Everybody else, have a tremendous evening. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for watching. Before you head out, I want to just remind you that I am a criminal defense lawyer here in Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, we've got a long history of helping good people facing criminal charges to find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases and beyond that in their lives. Our phone number for a free case evaluation is 480-787-0394. You can also find us online at www.rrlawaz.com. We can help with any type of criminal charge in the state of Arizona. Things like DUI, drug offenses, misdemeanor offenses. And we can also help with clearing up old case records, like expunging cases or making sure that you can restore your rights so that you can vote again or possess a firearm again or apply for some other federal benefits. We can remove mugshots off the internet. Basically, anytime that you or somebody you know or love is in trouble with the law in the state of Arizona, we have an amazing team of people. We would just love the opportunity to help. And our phone number, of course, 480-787-0394. And if you don't need any legal services, that's a very good thing, but you may be interested in some informational offerings so that you are prepared if you do have to deal with the police. And of course, I want to invite you to head on over to gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. You'll notice here, I've got several different trainings that are available, including the law enforcement interaction training. This is the 1, 2, 3 rule for dealing with the police. It's one rule you need, 2 questions that the police can ask of you, and 3 responses if they ask you a problematic question. So that's available now. You can also get a load at my personal productivity system here called Existence Systems. Fun little course. And then we have here, if you're a lawyer or a legal professional, be sure to check out this program. We are meeting twice every month. Again, all of this over at gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. And if none of that sounds any good to you, well, just go ahead and give us a follow, because I'm working on some other products and some other offerings. And of course, if you have not already done so, I want to invite you one more time to head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. It's where you can support the show, and it's where we can connect. We've got monthly Zoom meetings and a lot of other goodies coming up. So I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much for watching and for all of your love and support. I will see you on the next one.